Welcome to a new year and a new decade. It's hard to believe. 2020. Thinking back to the Jetsons, we should be having flying cars and everything else right now with all the science fiction stuff that was coming along. Just it's hard to believe it's 2020. Thank you for coming back with us on Lessons of Vietnam show. We plan on continuing to bring you the real stories of the Vietnam War and the men and women who involved. Do you have something to say? Would you like to tell your story of how the Vietnam War affected you? We would love to have you as a guest. As you can see there on the screen, the Lessons of Vietnam show. I'm your host, Bill Dixon. I was Vietnam 67, 68 during the Tet Offensive. We're broadcast courtesy of Nissan Communications, their world headquarters here in Raleigh, North Carolina. You need to watch some of his other shows that Amnon has on Nissan Communications. If you have any comments and suggestions and so forth, just email me at dixonbill80@yahoo. And if you want to participate during the show, to make comments, ask questions, or whatever you want to do, as long as it's got to do with the show in Vietnam, call in 919-518-9773. That's 919-518-9773. You want to write that down because sometimes I get going and forget to give you the number again. Or go to Skype and use Computers 2K Voice, and you can come in and be part of the show. I would recommend you using Skype. But come in, like I said, ask questions and so forth. As always, we've got the Veterans Crisis Line out there. You see the numbers there, 1-800-273-0255. Press 1 or do the text. If you know a veteran or you are a veteran who is having problems, reach out to them and encourage them to call these people, some good people there. Our show tonight, we're going to be discussing behind the scenes view of Vietnam today. I have been back to Vietnam 3 times. And on the surface, you go back over there and everything is beautiful. The people seem to be happy. The economy is going. South Vietnam is growing like you would not believe. And it's a great place for tourists to go. When I went back over, I was expecting people standing around with AK-47s and so forth. You don't see all that. Like I said, tourists are great. But you'll notice that the people do not say anything about the government. There's a reason for that. I wanted to go back to Vietnam one more time. This show may eliminate that, but getting on into the show, what type of government does Vietnam have? Well, Vietnam has a communist government. It's one of the 5 remaining communist countries in the world today. The president is the head of the republic and prime minister is the head of the government. It has 3 branches, the executive, which is administered by the government and the president, the legislative, which consists of National Assembly of Vietnam, and the judiciary, which comprises of the courts. They do have elections. They're kind of useless, but we won't go into that right at this moment. Observations from an American Vietnam veteran that has returned to Vietnam several times and has talked with the Vietnamese people and Vietnamese Americans here in America. The communists may have won the war, but the capitalists have won this cosmopolitan city, Saigon, which officially is named Ho Chi Minh City, but if you're there, it's Saigon, that buzzes with entrepreneurial energy. Alongside the hammer and sickle flags are Chanel and Cartier boutiques. Young Vietnamese are as selfie and Facebook obsessed as peers around the world, maybe even more, and they're focused on how to take advantage of a growing economy. The young people over there are very interested in how to start their own business, make money, and so forth. So it's on the surface there, you definitely have the free enterprise system going. The thoughts from a Vietnamese in Saigon, he calls it red capitalism. Vietnam is a communist country, but it seems like the economy is going on the capitalist way, he said. It's more freedom, more free market in Vietnam, easy to do business in Vietnam now. And that's, like I said, if you go in as a tourist, everything is wonderful. No matter how strong our economy is, the conflict among Vietnamese people on both sides is very strong, he said. So the things we have to do is not only unify the different parts of the country, but also unify people's hearts. there are still two Vietnams. And you go, you can get the different feelings between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. And the Vietnamese people still remember the war, a few of them, even though the communists have done a great job with their propaganda and so forth. But there's still that distance. Observation, this is a personal observation. After visiting former North Vietnam and former South Vietnam, there's a strong undercurrent that there are still two Vietnams. South Vietnam is growing with a strong free enterprise, though controlled by the communists, where North Vietnam is more austere in the seat of government. One is North Vietnam is like everything is the government, like the capital city is your state or whatever. But then South Vietnam is the one that pays all the bills. The people of the two areas are very different. The people of South Vietnam appear to have hope, and the people of North Vietnam just appear to go through life resigned to the Communist Party control. There is definitely a difference in attitudes when you go. That's the top picture there is the new Dragon Bridge at Da Nang. It's beautiful. It lights up at night. That's South Vietnam today in the Da Nang area. And down here at the bottom is North Vietnam, right up from Hanoi, north of Hanoi. It's the Ha Long Bay. It's one of the most beautiful places you'll ever go. You see that junk there. That's basically got probably 12 to 13 staterooms on it. It's a great place to go and spend a day or so on it. But that's kind of gives you the idea of the two Vietnams today. But Vietnam to me is kind of like that duck. On the surface, he's just floating along just as easy, but that up under the water, and those feet are just going like mad. I mean, just tearing it up just to keep moving around and so forth. That's kind of like what I look at Vietnam today. On the surface, everything is wonderful. It's great for tourists and so forth. It's growing, but under the surface, there's that paddling away with the problems they have with their interior of the people. The constant threat of China taking over Vietnam is always looming in the background of the entire country of Vietnam. After we left, there was a war between Vietnam and China. China made Vietnam pay back all the money, or not all of it, but a lot of the money that they had given them to fight the war by their rights. The people of Vietnam almost starved there for a while. They don't like to use the word China. Don't mention the China Sea. When you're there, they don't like that. Don't know what you would call the sea there, but it is the China Sea. That's always looming in the background. The harsh treatment of the South by North's Communist Party after the war, especially treatment of former South Vietnamese military, has left a division amongst the citizens of a supposedly unified Vietnam. We're talking about the re-education camps, the way that they treated the civilians and so forth after the war. They did not want, the re-education camps were basically slave labor camps where they had Vietnamese and gave them very little food, almost no medicine at all, and the way they treated the people. So that feeling is still back in the back of their minds. A Vietnamese journalist argues that the future won't be as bright if Vietnam fails to confront the past and address its long-lasting divisions. But communism seems to want to ignore the divisions or treat it heavy-handed. If you go to the museums, it's still very one-sided, the propaganda and so forth, how the war went and so forth. So they're going to have to address that division between the two people and bring the people in, but they don't seem to be doing that a whole lot. Now, this gives you an idea of the traffic in Saigon. One of the most dangerous things in the world is basically crossing the streets of Saigon. You see those people there on bikes and motorcycles and so forth. They don't stop. What you got to do is you walk, you raise your hand, get attention to their attention, and walk across the street. And do not stop. You just keep moving. They weave in and out around you. Now, more than 12 million people live and work in Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon. Most are still referred to as Saigon by the local population. Roads are crowded with scooters everywhere. You look, people are doing business. They sell food, fruit, vegetables, clothes, jewelry, and just about anything else you want. You can see one of the restaurants there and so forth. That's the surface of Vietnam today. That's the surface that the tourists see. And like I said, the food is great. The people are great. It's a good place to visit. This gives you some more pictures of Vietnam today. You see the ladies at the top left corner in the Aldais. You see some tourists in the pedal thing. You see an outdoor restaurant down on the right-hand corner with Mama San's got cooking rice right there on the street. You see one of the beaches with the pools, how beautiful they are. That middle picture at the top is Da Nang, I believe, with the road and the ocean there. The beaches are gorgeous. There's some of the stores and so forth. Some of the it's probably tourists wearing the Vietnamese typical hat going down. But that gives you an idea of the beautiful part of Vietnam today and the people and so forth. So you can see the country. The bottom picture, that would be Hoi An. That is one of the ancient cities there. It floods 3 or 4 times a year, but they keep right on coming back. You see a big rice paddy there. You see Mama San carrying that proverbial basket. You see Mama San there with her covering her son as a Buddhist. But, you know, that kind of gives you an idea that there's so much going on there. Top left-hand corner, that is the Vietnam water puppet show that goes on in Hanoi. I call it the water torture show. It was a beautiful show, but that seats were made for Vietnamese. And I'm probably about 200 pounds more than average Vietnamese. So I had trouble sitting there. There are some of the kids swinging on a swing. And the bottom picture, you can see there, the bottom picture, that is, which one? No, you missed a picture. There you go. Okay, that's not there, okay. The bottom picture is, shows you, let's see, Burger King and Popeyes and traffic and so forth. Kind of gives you an idea how things are going in Vietnam, your traffic and all the stores. It almost looks like Times Square in New York and so forth. So that's what you see when you go. I know I've said it, and I've heard other people come back from Vietnam, especially veterans, says, "Hey, communism be dead in 10 years." I'm not certain about that, but you would not know there's communism if you go into the South. The Vietnam-American War is over. But the Vietnamese Freedom War is far from over, despite the communist heavy-handed control of the media and activities of the people of Vietnam. As a tourist, you see a beautiful country, friendly people, and outstanding tourist accommodations. Vietnam is a great place to visit and experience their culture. You will not see armed guards standing around. As a tourist, you have a great deal of freedom to travel around. You can go just about anywhere you want to, unless you want to go to where one of the military bases are. I was stationed right outside of Bien Hoa, and I wanted to go to Bien Hoa, but I couldn't even get close, which I guess we do the same thing here. Behind the tranquil scene, the one that tourists never see is that duck, peaceful on the surface, but paddling away beneath the surface as hard as it can. The Lessons of Vietnam has compiled information from 2 readily available sources to show you the underwater pictures of the struggle. One of them is the 88 Project. As you see their logo there, they've got handcuffs. I get that on a regular basis. For free speech in Vietnam and the RFA, Radio Free Asia. They do a lot of reports of what's going on over there. The 88 Project supports and encourages freedom of expression in Vietnam by sharing the stories and advocating for Vietnamese activists who are persecuted because of their peaceful dissent. Our vision is that one day the Vietnamese people will be able to freely express themselves and actively take part in socio-political process to bring about the changes they desire without fear or discrimination or persecution. That came from 88 Project. Vietnam is a one-party state in which the Communist Party of Vietnam has complete control over state's functions, social organizations, and media. The party state routinely uses laws, decrees, and coercive systems of police and prisons to deprive citizens of their basic political and civil rights. The 88 Project was created after one of our founders, and I'm gonna murder some of these names here. Uh, Wong was personally affected by the Vietnamese regime. It was during a political crackdown in the summer of 2009 that several of Wong's friends were arrested for their peaceful dissent. She started to advocate for their release by working closely with their families and international human rights organizations, and it was here that she noticed a lack of information in English on many cases of political prisoners in Vietnam. While in her PhD program at Indiana University, Wong reached out to the Student Amnesty International Group for assistance. There she met Kylie Yulan, who at that time was an undergraduate student. The two began working together on advocacy of efforts, including public outreach on the campus and letter writing campaign. Around the same time, Vietnamese activists in Poland connected Wong with Ella Genkarz, a filmmaker who wanted to create a documentary about human rights in Vietnam. In November of 2012, at the confluence of these projects, the 88 Project was born with the aim to share the stories of people unjustly harassed and imprisoned for their peaceful dissent. I guess that's enough of an introduction there. Ultimately, we hope that our work will strengthen the democratic movement in empowering and encouraging the activists to continue to pursue their endeavors. The democratization process will only succeed and be sustainable if there are citizens who are willing to participate and make a difference in the political process. Now, I highly encourage you to go on to the 88 Project website or the Radio Free Asia and see the information for yourself. Why 88? The 88 Project takes its name from one of the repressive provisions of Vietnam's 1999 Criminal Code, which is routinely used to persecute peaceful critics of the regime. Article 88, which is now Article 117 of the 2015 Criminal Code, makes it a crime to propagate against the Socialist Republic, with imprisonment sentences ranging from 3 to 20 years. There are many other articles that have been employed to imprison hundreds of peaceful activists in Vietnam. Under Article 79 of the 1999 Criminal Code, currently Article 109 of the 2015 Code, those who form or join organizations with intent to overthrow the people's government can face capital punishment. There are just two examples of the dozens of criminal provisions routinely used against critics of the regime. The Vietnamese government has been pressed many times to revise these provisions, which criminalize the legitimate exercise of human rights. Yet the use of these provisions remain as extensive as ever. The only rights that are given are the rights given by the Communist Party. The number 88 expresses in the project's logos as two handcuffs, has become a symbol of all repressive Vietnamese laws. However, the slightly open handcuffs in our logo symbolize the fact that not even prison bars can hold back the ideas of hope, human rights, and democracy. Vietnam Human Rights Report, January through June 2019, crackdown on Facebook users, civil society groups, and public protesters, and continues July 31st, 2019. Two pressers, Dang Ngoc Thanh and Pham Thanh, were convicted and sentenced to 24 and 15 and a half years in prison, respectively, in multiple trials, the most recent of which was in May. Dang Ngoc Thanh is only 19 years old. In addition, he's a U.S. citizen. Michael Nguyen was tried on June 24th, 2019, and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Of the 16 people arrested since January, 2 are women and 3 are religious minorities. Authorities have also tried at least 26 people in the first half of 2019, sentencing 5 of them to 10 plus years in prison. 19 were convicted, at least in part, for their roles in nationwide June 2018 protests. 50% of charges against political prisoners in 2019 have been under Article 117 of the Code 2015 Criminal Code. Propaganda against the state, followed by 14% on Article 331, abusing democratic freedom. The majority of actors were charged at the provincial municipality, and that was the state or the county range. Moreover, at least 33 people have been affected in incidents of harassment by authorities, state-sponsored thugs, and individuals, including physical attacks, detentions, and harassments at private residences. This includes 8 women and 12 religious minorities out of all incidents against political prisoners and activists at risk. 17 occurred in Ho Chi Minh City, 10 in Hanoi, and 3 in Dong Nai and Bien Tre province. Loc Wong, land grab on January 4th, 2019, which is somewhat like our eminent domain, I guess. This was from Facebook, Pham Dong Thuong. In January, the local administration destroyed over 100 homes in the Loc Hung area of Ho Chi Minh City, many of which belong to dissidents and veterans of the military of the Republic of Vietnam. In other words, the former South Vietnamese soldiers, who are not recognized as veterans of the state. They're not recognized for much of anything. Authorities harassed and displaced residents after the forced eviction as well. Activists were also harassed before and during the U.S.-North Korea summit in Hanoi in February, harassed ahead of the anniversary of Vietnam's reunification day in April, and prevented from attending the U.S.-Vietnam Human Rights Dialogue in May. Political prisoner Nguyen Minh Tran and Nguyen Tha Huay and Dong Ta Lam. That's and the way I just pronounce it is who they are. Dong Ta Lam is the young lady at the bottom. Dozens have been targeted for their peaceful online activities. The new law on cybersecurity went into effect on January 1st, 2019, has been followed by campaigns to remove anti-state content from platforms like Facebook and YouTube. Of the 16 people arrested in the first 6 months of 2019, 7 were arrested, at least in part for their online activities. And everywhere you go, everybody's on Facebook. There are Nguyen Minh Tran, brother of a detained Facebooker, Han Tha To Na. Okay, all those names there, I'm not even going to bother to go over them because I ain't going to pronounce them right anyway, but you can read them. Dozens more have been harassed for their online activities but not formally charged. Political prisoners Chung Van Kam, Nguyen Van Vinh, and Nguyen Nang Thien. You can see their pictures there. Others arrested so in the first 6 months of 2019 are Australian national and member of overseas democracy group Viet Thanh Truong Van Kam. In other words, he's an Australian citizen. Alleged Viet Thanh member Tran Van Nguyen, member of the Democratic Party of Vietnam, Phan Vo Dep, music teacher, Nguyen Nang Ta, anti-corruption activist, and Tran Viet Bang, environmental activist and member of the Brotherhood for Democracy, Nguyen Van Vinh, religious freedom activist, and Tran Van Nguyen, and build, operate, transfer, BOT, protester, Tran Dan Sung, and okay, a lot more names there than there were people. Political prisoner, that's a young lady there. She's a political prisoner. After a disturbing trend in 2019 has been the kidnapping of activists by security agents. Former political prisoner Nguyen Quang Huang Nan was forcibly detained in Germany and deported back to Vietnam along with his wife in March. Nguyen Tha No Na, that's the young lady there, a Facebooker, doctor, and single mother, was kidnapped from the hospital she works at in January and later located in prison. And blogger and former political prisoner Quang Nhat Net was kidnapped from Thailand while attempting to seek asylum there and forcibly returned to Vietnam, where he is now behind bars. You can't even leave the country and be safe. Further appalling conditions persist in prisons. Multiple prisoners have been on hunger strike for weeks this summer to protest conditions, and a group of supporters, including the elderly and children, were viciously attacked while attempting to visit the striking political prisoners earlier this month. Vietnamese authorities continue to silence dissidents in a myriad of ways, through traditional means like arrest and imprisonment, but also through more dispersed, repetitive, and often less public visibility tactics such as travel restrictions, administrative fines, confiscation of important documents, and attacks in private and public spaces. They seem to have a secret police that has been known to go around and beat people up. Further, Arrested April 23rd, 2019, sentenced to 8 years in prison under Article 117. Expected release in April 23rd, 2017. Current status is sent to prison. Quite often the Vietnamese have a couple of names. You see there, his date of birth is 27/1971. So it was at the tail end of the war. He's a Buddhist. His occupation is business profession, and he's active in religious freedom. Detail of his imprisonment: at around 4 p.m. on April 23rd, 2019, Public Security of An Giang Province raided his private residence and arrested him without an arrest warrant. On the next day, the investigative security agency of An Giang Province sent an announcement on arresting Yang in emergency, in which Yang was accused of storing, or propagating information materials, items for the purpose of opposing the state of Social Republic of Vietnam under Article 17 of the 2015 Penal Code. Order to the conviction report of the procuracy from 2014 to March 2019, Young was accused of using a Facebook account to post and share over 3,100 articles and images and 99 video clips intended to falsify and defame the policy and the reputation of the Vietnamese Communist Party, alongside with the other people's regime. On November 27, 2019, the People's Court of An Giang Province sentenced Tran to 8 years in prison on the accusation of making, storing, disseminating, or propagandizing information, materials, and products that aim to oppose the state of the Social Republic of Vietnam under Article 117. This one was arrested and officially prosecuted by the Public Security Force and the People's Procuracy of An Giang Province on April 23, 2019, which means that he was detained for 6 months before trial. And they haven't heard of the word, what's the word when you go to get in jail, you get out? Bail. They don't do bail. Only 3 members of Tran's family could participate in the trial. His physical health history: on May 20th, 2019, the detention center at An Giang Province requested his family send him some medicine, saying that he contracted many diseases and kept vomiting. His daughter, with her 3-month-old child, went on May 22nd, but was not allowed to meet with Yang. Despite asking the family to bring medicine for Yang, detention center officers refused to receive it because Yang's daughter asked for his signature in order to confirm whether he received the medicine or not. The last profile was 2019-12-23 at 1,500 hours. In other words, she just wanted to make sure he got it. He wanted somebody to sign that they were going to get it for him, but they didn't want to do that. Trang Thanh is a member of the Hoa Buddhism, one of 5 religions that do not accept the control from the Communist Party of Vietnam. As an activist, Yang has advocated for freedom of religion. Whether he got the medicine or not, we don't know. This young lady, is her current status that she's in prison. Her name is Tran Tha Wan. Date of birth, 1976. She's a Christian Catholic. She's a freelancer. She is in current prison number 5 in Thanh Hoa Province, and she's environmental. She's a member of the Brotherhood of Democracy, whatever that group is, okay? Immediate concerns: Tran Wan's family is very concerned about her health in prison. Since February, she has fainted often and had to be taken to the emergency room every month. Her family has requested that she be treated at a hospital, but prison authorities have denied their request. Her family also sent medicine to prison, but whether Wan can take those medicines or not depends on the prison's infirmity's decision. So even though she gets the medicine, they may decide that she didn't need it. Background: she resided in Long Hop Hamlet, Thac Kim Commune. She's a member of Coasat Parish, which is the Catholic church there. History of activism: she was active in her Catholic community, raising money for charitable causes. She also spoke out against pollution in the wake of the 2016 Formosa environmental disaster and participated in protests in Loch Ha districts to demand compensation for the fishermen for the pollution caused by the toxic spill. Okay, kind of like the oil wells in Texas Gulf and so forth. Arrested October 17, 2017, sentenced to 9 years in prison under Article 79. She'd be expected to be released in October 17th, 2026. And you can see when the last that report was updated. Okay? Vietnamese dissident dies of stroke in prison. Police refuse to give the body back. This is from Radio Free Asia. A retired teacher who posted writings on his Facebook page criticizing Vietnam's government has died in prison, with authorities calling stroke his cause of death and refusing to return his body to family members, sources said. See, if they return the body, then they could do an autopsy and find out what really happened to him. Okay? He was serving a 13-year prison sentence for subversive in Nha An Province. He died at 8:03 a.m. on December 10th at a local hospital where he was been taken by prison guards. Dao's son, Dao Du Thuong, told Radio Free Asia's Vietnamese Society on Tuesday. The doctor said that my father died of a brain hemorrhage and bronchitis, young Dao said. We're not allowed to bring his body home for burial, though, and under pressure from the authorities, we have had them to let them do the autopsy. Dao, 58, who was serving his term in prison number 6 in San Quang Province District, had shown signs of illness in prison, was taken to the Nha An Friendship General Hospital for treatment on December 3rd, Dao's son said. Reached for comment, an official on duty at the hospital told reporters on Tuesday to come to the hospital in person for more information. Meanwhile, calls to Prison 6, where Dao and his 2 other prisoners had carried out a hunger strike in June and July to protest poor conditions, rang unanswered. In other words, they didn't answer the phone. Speaking to Radio Free Asia, Thailand-based Amnesty International campaign manager Wen Tong Sun called police refused to return Dao's body to his family for burial unaccepted. This kind of denial is not just immoral for Vietnam, but is contrary to ethical standards around the world, Wen said. Amnesty International is now calling for the Vietnamese government to intervene in the case and to order that Dao's body be returned. In a statement, Human Rights Watch Deputy Asia Director Phil Robertson said that Dao's death from an alleged stroke again puts Vietnam's horrible prison conditions in the spotlight. A lack of adequate food and health services is a huge problem in Vietnam's prisons, and even when prisoners are seriously ill, they cannot get temporary medical release from prison. These problems are compounded by severe restrictions regularly imposed on prison visits by family members and legal counsel. Dissent is not tolerated in the communist nation, and authorities routinely use a set of vague provisions in the penal code to detain dozens of writers and bloggers. I believe if I was a Vietnamese citizen, I'd stay off Facebook. Radio Free Asia, China, Vietnam, lead Asia in jail journalist. In other words, if you're a journalist, you probably need to stay out of China and Vietnam. China and Vietnam are Asia's leading jailers of journalists, with at least 48 now held in China and 12 held in Vietnam, a media freedoms watchdog group said in a report issued on Wednesday. Usually you would think of the journalists having a little bit of leeway. In China, the number has increased as president of China consolidated political control of the country and instituted even tighter controls on the media. New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists said in its year-end annual report. Vietnam, meanwhile, remains Asia's second worst jailer after China, with 12 behind bars. Those held, Radio Free America contributors Nguyen Van Hoa, arrested in January 2017, who wrote for Radio Free Asia, and Tuan Dwight Not, who was abducted in January 2019 in Thailand and after applying for asylum and brought back to Vietnam by force. Others now held in Vietnam include Voice of America reporter Lee An Huong, freelance reporter and journalist employed by religious and anti-corruption newspaper. Vietnam has been consistently rated not free in the areas of internet and press freedom by Freedom House, a U.S.-based watchdog group. China, Vietnam show internet no guarantee of open information, press freedom group says. In other words, they've got Facebook and they've got all the others out there, but you better be watch what you do because they control them and watch them. Hope that access to the internet in unfree countries would pull down barriers to the free flow of information have been dashed by both direct and indirect methods of censorship by governments determined to control what their citizens read and hear. A press freedom watchdog group said it in the report. You would think they go online and see how other people in the United States and other places live and know that they're getting shortchanged, but the government controlling what they see on Facebook and other places kind of eliminates that. You would think that it would give them more strength to go out and fight for freedom if they could see what it was. Even though there's a lot of tourists going over there, the general population is still kept from what goes on in other parts of the country. The internet was supposed to make censorship obsolete, but that hasn't happened. New York-based Committee to Protect Journalism Executive Director Joel Simon said in a release, 10 most censored countries. Censorship is alive and well, Simon said, pointing to China and Vietnam as examples of countries that have active online communities, but whose government uses new technology and often purchase from Western companies to stifle dissent and control the media. A new cybersecurity law in Vietnam grants authorities sweeping powers to censor online content, with technology companies requiring to identify users and remove politically sensitive postings, citing reports by the Reuters news agency. So if you go to Vietnam, you better watch what you put on Facebook to tell your friends back here what's going on, because especially if you're a journalist. The Communist Party-led government owns and controls all print and broadcast media in Vietnam, with laws and decrees in place forbidding criticism of the country's government or its policies, report said. Vietnam's 2016 press law says the press must serve as the voice of the party organizations and state agencies, and government directives sent to newspapers, radio, and TV editors highlights the news the state wants covered and lists topics banned for discussions. Now think about all that goes on in our newspapers, how they criticize government and president and everything else, and just think about here, everything has got to be approved and so forth by the government and control. Meanwhile, a 10,000-strong censorship department called Force 47, run by the country's military, scans media content for wrong views. 10,000 strong censorship department are listening and watching the news media and Facebook just to see if you have a wrong view. At least 11 citizen journalists and bloggers reporting on political sensitive issues were in jail as of December 1st, 2018. Among them, Radio Free Asia blogger Phong Nhat, who was abducted in Thailand and forced back to Vietnam at the beginning of the year, which we've already talked about. Reporters for foreign news bureaus are closely watched, with journalists entering the country on media visas, followed at all times by a government minder. In other words, if you are a journalist and you're going to Vietnam, you get a visa and you get a assigned person to you who will approve what you send out and prove where you go. Vietnam, a population of 92 million people, of which 55 million are estimated to be users of Facebook, has been consistently rated not free in the area of internet and press freedom by Freedom House. 55 million people. I guess that's why they have 10,000 people watching what you say. Police and thugs thought church charity event for disabled South Vietnamese veterans. These are former South Vietnamese soldiers, the ones who fought with us, who have no pension, basically ignored by the communist government. These people are all people who spent years in re-education camps or slave labor camps, doing whatever unbelievable things that they were forced to do. And now they're getting old, and a lot of them, as you see, have problems as far as getting around, amputations and so forth. Wounded and disabled South Vietnamese military war veterans attend an event hosted by the Saigon Redemption Church in South Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh City, an undated photo. Okay. Police and thugs broke up an event organized by the Catholic Church for disabled South Vietnamese military war veterans in the southern province of Vinh Giang this week. A priest in charge of the program told Radio Free Asia's Vietnamese service Tuesday. Someone who's been on the show several times, Del Del Vecchio, has gone to Vietnam with money raised by the Vietnamese American Society and tried to help these South Vietnamese soldiers, and it was strongly suggested that he get out of the country. They had watched him, what he was doing back here. He had been sick for a while. They knew about that when he got there. So they don't like people do a whole lot with the South Vietnamese military still. Reverend Lee Ngoc Thon of Song Bong Redemption Church in the city of Can Tho in Vietnam's Mekong Delta region said the police officers and thugs mobilized to stop the former soldiers from accepting donations. The event on Monday was held by volunteers in cooperation with Reverend Ho Doc Thom of the Redemption Church in the Tiên Nguyen town of Can Gia, who runs a Vietnamese injured veterans program. We distributed donations to injured soldiers from 13 provinces, he said. A few weeks ago, we also had events like this in Can Giang, Bac Linh, and Ca Mau provinces, and everything went well. But yesterday's decision was tense, he said. Veterans gathered in Ca Lac district to wait to receive their gifts for the Vietnamese New Year, known as Tet. The first 10 veterans got their gifts without any problem, but after that, the police interfered and stopped the program. Vietnam's communist government and official atheist state does not endorse such events, even though they play a crucial social services role by helping elderly and disabled veterans who would not otherwise receive assistance from the government. Church organizers and volunteers then moved the event to the city of My Tho in Thanh Nguyen province, but traffic police, a rapid response police squad, and other security forces and local security personnel disrupted the event. The police who interfered with our event were uniformed policemen, traffic policemen, security people wearing masks, and thugs, the priest said. There were 3 to 4 people stationed every meter from the church, he said. They did not let veterans sit outside the church. One veteran who participated in the program but did not want to give his name for safety reasons told Radio Free Asia that he fears the Vietnamese government, which persecutes South Vietnamese military war veterans and the Catholic Church. People at the church told me to come here at 9:30 a.m., but they did not let us inside when we arrived, he said. We walked around until we met some of the church people outside. They told us to wait for our gifts. We got our gifts. The veteran said he was a Marine injured in the Battle of Quang Tri, the northernmost province capital of the U.S.-backed former Republic of South Vietnam during the 1968 Tet Offensive during the Vietnam War, which is why he was not able to get care. My right hand was injured and now I can't do anything, he said. Life is tough. I was very happy to hear that we would receive some gifts, but I'm scared, he added. I'm afraid of the government because I was associated with the South Vietnamese government. The gift-giving event for disabled veterans of the South Vietnamese military was initiated by the Saigon Redemption Church in 2013. It had been held annually until this May when Lee Ngoc Thang, who oversaw the program, was transferred. There is one of the soldiers. On September 19th, the Redemption Church in Can Giang announced that it would resume the program. After the fall of Saigon to communist North Vietnamese in 1975, more than 250,000 South Vietnamese soldiers were sent to re-education camps where they were suffered torture and malnutrition, historians record. Reported by Radio Free Asia's Vietnamese service, translated by Viet Ha, written in English by Roseanne Guerin, but they even plowed under the cemeteries of the ones that were killed during the war. Vietnamese activists deported by U.S. after failed asylum bid, now detained and beaten in Nha An. Han Van Thon, in helmet, is shown during a protest over the April 2016 toxic waste spill in Ninh An, Vietnam, in an undated photo. A Vietnamese environmentalist activist sent back to Vietnam by the United States in October after losing his bid for political asylum has been detained and has been beaten in prison in the country's coastal Nha An province, according to his wife. Nha An arrived back in Vietnam October 20th, though his family was not notified until more than a week later. His wife, Ho Thanh Than, told Radio Free Asia's Vietnamese service. On October 28th or 29th, the police sent me a summons, this is from his wife, a summons and a notice that my husband had been detained, said, adding that after she went to their office, police warned her not to publicize any documents she might see dealing with her husband's case. In particular, Thon says she was warned against sharing information with a Catholic priest and family friend when for posting online. If we hear or see that you have done this, we will not let you meet your husband, and the charges against him will be more severe, Thom said she was told. I was too terrified to inform the news media or to contact Father Thuc about this, she said. Later, a man who said he had been in jail with Thon told them that her husband had been thin and his face and hands were bruised when he last saw him, suggesting that Thon had been beaten in custody. Tham also told Radio Free Asia that she had been puzzled by a video clip showing on television in which Stan confessed to involvement in human trafficking after being questioned by police, and that something about the television confession seemed not right. So not only they got him for, now they got him for human trafficking too. Then fled Vietnam on May 12, 2018, fearing impeachment for his role in a march with hundreds of victims of an April 2016 toxic waste spill by a Taiwan-owned firm that destroyed livelihood across Vietnam's central coast and led to widespread protests and arrests in affected provinces. After he escaped, he traveled to Laos and Thailand. Van told Radio Free Asia's Vietnam service in a phone interview earlier this year from a U.S. immigration detention center in New Mexico. Then in Thailand, I bought a ticket to Cuba, and in Cuba, I bought a plane ticket to Panama and asked for asylum there, Thon said. As I was waiting for asylum, I met some Cubans, migrants on their way to Mexico. I asked if I could accompany them, and when we arrived in Mexico, they let me stay there for about 20 days, he said. Thon said he then walked to the U.S. border and met with police to request asylum. While in detention, Thom went through immigration questions and went to court 3 times. He said, added that after his 3rd hearing, he was denied refugee status and was scheduled to be deported. The 3rd time I was in court, the court told me that I was not eligible for asylum because they didn't believe me, and they didn't believe what I said and had done in Vietnam. Evidence submitted to authorities to support Thon's case included letters from a Catholic priest who had joined the protest and the documents from Vietnamese police summoning Thon to help identify other protesters. Thon's lawyer, Con Pham, told Radio Free Asia in an earlier report. In other words, they wouldn't believe what he said. Evidence was also presented showing that he had been beaten by the police in Vietnam. On October 21st, Thon made a call to a friend and supporter, Lee Thong Tung, saying that he had begun a hunger strike to protest his continued detention. Tung told Radio Free Vietnamese service in an interview. Han Van Thon, born in 1982, was deported on October 21st after his plea for asylum was rejected by U.S. authorities. California Congressman Alan Lowenthal said, adding that Thon is now under direct and immediate threat from the government of Vietnam that he fled and where we have returned him. So we sent him back and wouldn't let him come in. We let everybody else come in, but wouldn't let him come in. This is Hen. Ton Quoc Hen, Facebook, that's a Facebook photo. Hen has been active on Facebook for several years, and he sometimes shares posts to raise awareness of the environment, politics, and other issues. Hen desires a society with democracy, human rights, and political pluralism, and he advocates for amending the cybersecurity law, which was controversial but adopted in 2018 and came into force in January to respect freedom of expression. Now, that up top you see in yellow there, that is a post he put on Facebook. And down below is his translation. tomorrow, 26/9/2019, I was invited to Doc Mick District, Doc Nung, invited to work with content in the invitation. I am information so that my brothers and sisters can accompany me. I'm aware of what I do. I always speak to protest the right and martial arts for fair and humanities society. I always wish to live in a free democratic society, respect human rights, especially the country is no longer ruled by dictatorship. I am 43 years old this year, and now my health is normal. If the day tomorrow, unfortunately, I have any health problems when working with the authorities, the CA district must be responsible. If I get arrested for any reason, please support me to find a lawyer. Thank you, brothers and sisters. In other words, he wasn't arrested. He was invited to go to see the cops. Of course, if he hadn't shown up, I'm certain he would have been. There's the invitation he got. On September 26, 2019, whose Facebook account is Trong Tran, was invited to work with the public security of Doc District, regarding his activities on Facebook. At the police station, 4 security officers from provincial and district levels questioned Hein as to whether he owned the Facebook account Trong Nan Tran. Security forces printed out some articles, asked if he posted them, and alleged that they contained a signal of inciting and defaming the state. They also asked Hein about his relationship with some of his friends on Facebook. Hein finally signed a report about his meeting and went home safely at noon on the same day. In Vietnam, the number of Facebook users was expected to reach 45.3 million in 2019, indicating an increase from 41.7 million in 2017. By 2019, Vietnam's population was predicted to reach 95.5 million. Next to YouTube, Facebook was the leading social media platform in Vietnam in 2018. Overall, the country has a 64% active social media penetration rate. Users primarily engage with video and photo posts or use Facebook Messenger as their main social media messenger. Now, attorney ejected from trial of Vietnam who offered to defend a blogger. This attorney got up and offered to defend one of their bloggers and was ejected. A trial judge in Vietnam's Nha Trang City on Thursday ejected from her courtroom a defense attorney representing a lawyer who was charged with tax evasion after being offered to represent a former blogger from Radio Free Asia. Now, what I've got here is we have a lawyer who was going to represent another lawyer who was all of a sudden charged with tax evasion, but he was kicked out of the second lawyer was kicked out of the courtroom. Ben was dragged from the courtroom by police officers attempting to raise points of order with Le Tang Hang, a senior jurist on a panel of judges trying the case. Ben told RFA's Vietnamese service in an interview, "My clients are lawyers, Tran Van Hoa and his wife," he said. "It has been over 24 hours since they applied for permission for 5 more lawyers to represent them, but the panel of judges has not approved. I raised this as an issue in court, but the judge would not let me speak," he said. After being turned wrong, he confirmed that it was her wish that the 5 lawyers be appointed. The judge invited him to leave the courtroom, he said. And you can see from the pictures how he was invited. Yeah. "I told her I would leave, but I tried to raise 2 points in protest against the chief judge. She was violating the law by depriving me of my rights and taking away my client's right to choose their own attorney. Ben was then swarmed by police who seized him by his arms and pulled him from the courtroom," he said, adding that he pleaded with police to be allowed to remain on court property so he could file a formal protest with the senior judicial officials. "But they continued to hold me by my neck and arms and forced me into a car and drove me away." Nearly 60 lawyers in Vietnam have now applied to represent Tran Van Hoa, who was charged with tax evasion after he agreed to defend dissident blogger and former RFA contributor Tuan Nguyen Ngoc, who was abducted in Thailand. They even arrested, making up charges for the attorney and arresting the other ones. Jailed in Vietnam from 2013 to 2015 from his writings criticizing Vietnam's government, now faces charge of abusing his position for his alleged involvement in a land fraud case while serving as a bureau chief at a newspaper in Da Nang City. He has not yet been brought to trial. Okay. Attorney Tran Van Hoa, who offered to defend blogger Nat, and whose office was raided in July by police who seized key documents in the case, is now scheduled to stand trial on November 13th. In other words, the judge, the lawyer has been getting ready to stand trial, but he hasn't been brought to trial yet. Each year on May 11th, the United States observes Vietnam Human Rights Day, a day to remember the importance of advancing fundamental freedoms, including freedom of expression, assembly, association, and religion. Vietnam remains an authoritarian state ruled by the Communist Party of Vietnam. The most recent National Assembly elections held in May 2016 were neither free nor fair. According to the State Department of Human Rights report, prison conditions were austere and occasionally life-threatening. Amnesty International and former prisoner of conscience noted that the prison authorities singled out political prisoners and ethnic minority prisoners, particularly in the Central Highlands, for physical abuse, solitary confinement, and denial for medical treatment. The United States and its allies are no longer fighting in Vietnam to stop the communism from spreading, but when we were there, we planted a seed. That seed is struggling, but it continues to fight for survival. Will it die and dry up? I don't think so, but it may take a long time to germinate. But the freedom seed is strong, motivated, and needs to be constantly nurtured. And again, Vietnam is a wonderful place to visit, enjoy the people and their culture, but realize under the surface there's still struggle going on. Maybe reach out to the Vietnamese American community here, close to where you live, and express and experience some of their culture and understand the programs. The Tet celebration is coming soon. To be exact, it is the 26th of January. It will be held at the Raleigh State Fairgrounds. Come, learn, enjoy, have an outstanding family-oriented time. The dragon dance is something that your kids need to see. Say hello to a new but ancient culture in America. That kind of gives you an idea of what it's like on the underside of Vietnam. As I say, when you go, it's a beautiful country and looks so peaceful, but the people are definitely not free. Thank you again for joining us tonight with the Lessons of Vietnam show. Please tell all your friends and encourage them to give us a look. Our next show is 22nd of January, and we have a special returning guest. If you remember, we had the Marine Colonel Andrew Finlayson, who has two currently books out, Killer Kane and Rice Paddy at Recon, who did a little bit of everything when he was in Vietnam. He was there 32 months or so. So he will be on our next show discussing the Phoenix program. A lot of secrecy and rumors surround the Phoenix program, and he's going to tell us about it, find out the real story of what was going on there with the Phoenix program. So that will be an exciting show. I'm looking forward to that. I've often so many misinformation about the Phoenix program is worse than the Vietnam program, and also some triangle activities going on. 13th of January, North Carolina State Veterans Council meeting at 1 o'clock at the VFW headquarters. You're invited to come to that if you live in the Triangle. 15th of January, North Carolina Veterans Network and Coffee. I did not bring the address with me. I've missed up on that. So if you need to know, send me an email at dixonbill8080@yahoo.com. January 20th, January is Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 530 meets. That meets in Durham on 54 Highway at Captain D's. Come over that. January 22nd, as we just talked about, will be the LOV show, Lessons of Vietnam. 26th of January will be the Tet Offensive. Tet, not offensive this time, but the Tet Festival. 28th of January, North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated has their meeting in Cary. And 29th of January, Wake County Veterans Council has a meeting. So there's lots of activities out there that you can get involved with veterans and stuff. Again, thank you for tuning in. We'll look forward to 2020 to continue growing and having more people. Reach out and let me know if there's a show you want to cover. I've got a guest coming in for the first show in February. So January, the next show, January 27th, I'm looking forward to. So you have a good evening and God bless, and we'll see you the next show. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.